Estamos aquí en Bruselas con Lieve Fransen, directora de la Comisión Europea en la DG Empleo y Asuntos Sociales, y le vamos a poner unas cuantas cuestiones sobre el sistema de protección social en Europa, en el marco económico actual y cuáles son los retos a que Europa se enfrenta en esos días.
Good morning. If we start from like a broad perspective, what do you think are the most urgent objectives for the social inclusion strategy in the EU at the moment?
Well, the European Union is confronted with, I think, from the broad perspective, three main challenges from the social perspective. The first challenge is the deep and long crisis that we are confronted with at the short term, and we are still in the middle of a social crisis in a way, while we're getting slowly out of an economic crisis. The second challenge is the aging demography. There is less children being born, more aging people, longer lives, good thing, but that requires also an adaptation. And the third challenge is an increasing inequality and a divergence also within Europe, but that's also the case in other continents like in Latin America. To me, these are the three main macro level challenges. The results of these challenges means that there's an increasing divergence and inequality, there's an increasing poverty, especially a poverty in a lot of countries focused on children. More children are poorer than older people, so that's really a major problem also. And then the result is also the unsustainability of the welfare system like we know, so we need major reforms. So what is urgent in all of this is that we need to reform our social systems, our welfare systems in Europe, so that we are adapted to an aging society, crisis, unemployment, bringing less finances to the social protection system. And therefore we need to increase employment, we need to increase efficiency, we need to find more partnerships, and we need to really increase the efficiency of our social welfare systems that I'm calling social investment systems. For me, that's the main macro level challenge that we're confronted with in Europe, and some of that is also true in other continents like Latin America, where the crisis is less important at this stage, but still there is inequality, there is poverty, especially children, there is less aging, so there's other opportunities to be to build social protection systems that are more prepared for eventualities like crisis or less growth.
And in order to increase efficiency and to build a social protection system that works, what do you think are the necessary institutional, political and even fiscal conditions that we need to reach these objectives?
Well, I would say for Europe specifically, the institutional aspects for the moment are very important because of the crisis. Europe has developed a very strong tools to focus on fiscal sustainability and macroeconomic balance. That was necessary to save the euro and the unbalance between the economic and the fiscal institutional setup. But on the other hand, our instruments to monitor social progress and or non-progress has not developed in the same way. So that really institutionally needs to be rebalanced. The social monitoring of the social aspects and objectives need to be improved seriously in the European context. That is also a political problem because of the crisis and the austerity measures that were taken. Europe and the Commission itself has lost a lot of credibility and legitimacy. and to get new governance structures in a way is politically going to be very difficult. Any treaty change for the moment would be very, very difficult. What we're talking about, for example, about developing an European level automatic stabilizer. Normally countries themselves have used social protection as an automatic stabilizer in the context of a crisis. The Eurozone countries have lost that stabilizing aspect, and therefore we would like to organize that more at European level. But that requires a treaty change that will require much more credibility and legitimacy and support from the populations and from the countries, from the member states, and that is not going to be necessarily there for the moment. So politically we're confronted with a very difficult situation for the moment. Let's see, in a few days we will know the election results. We will also increasingly know who will be in the new parliament, who will be in the new commission, in how far there is an appetite and a level of ambition that is needed for all of this. Fiscally, I think there's becoming a little bit more more openness because of the economy is going a little bit better than during the crisis, so there is a little bit more stability in the Eurozone also. Some of the countries like Portugal and Ireland are moving out of the what we call the program countries under bailout agreements in a way, so that creates an openness also in these countries to do more and better also in social areas, and that is highly needed to support the populations that have suffered most from the crisis actually.
If we move a bit away from the objectives and concentrate, I mean, despite the difficult economic situation, all the difficulties you just anticipated, on the achievements that we have reached in social policies over the last few years, what would you name?
Well, what I find most striking is actually that some countries like Denmark, Sweden, most Nordic countries, Finland, that have invested well and sufficiently in their social protection systems have weathered the crisis best. So they have spent quite a lot of support on social protection, but they have also moved their social protection system into a social investment system. The welfare state in Sweden is basically called a social investment state rather than a welfare state. I say this because this is also where we are trying to move other countries to. That means trying to prevent people becoming poor or prevent people becoming unemployed by investing early in children, investing in young people so that they have the right skills, that they're not leaving schools too early, that they really develop the skills that they would be useful in a market that is existing for the moment in Europe, because we find that people that have higher skills very often don't have much less unemployment. So there's the crisis in Spain, for example, shows that 2 million young people went to construction work before even ending their schooling. When there was a construction boom, but that they also, in the meantime, they married, they have young women and children, young women that are not skilled either, didn't go into the work labor force, and a million of these young people are now unemployed and low skilled. That is a major problem, not only for Spain but also for the rest of Europe, of course. That's then the spillover. Now, talking about achievements, I think these countries that did the right investment in early on, in childhood, in children, in young people, but also reformed their pension system and their employment system so that people work longer people live longer, so they have to work longer and contribute more to the social protection systems, the financing of it. These people, these countries are more successful. I think that's the major achievement now, is that other countries start seeing that this also is important. Some of the countries that have developed personalized services, but also personalized skills development. For example, Finland. In Finland, Finland has one of the best outcomes in education systems when measured with the PISA indicators. Why is that? It's not because their education system is best in general, but it's because they focus really also individualized at children that need specific attention. So they higher the level of education of the whole population, not just the best and the worst are left on the side, but they higher the level. The same thing is true in social services or employment services. It is not enough to provide passive cash transfers, but really to see what is it that we can help that person, unemployed or unskilled, to develop their capacities, and so therefore be activated in, well, like we say, in the labor market, or integrated better in societies. So there's a few very good examples of how it should be done and how it could be done successfully. There is a lot of bad examples where we are still living in a situation where social protection is seen as something really like a safety net for people. The safety net is okay, but people should not stay trapped in that net forever, but should find a way, should be helped to find a way out. And that's a change of approach.
Another problem that seems pretty much in the spotlight, both in Europe but also in Latin America, is the difference between, or the complementarity between poverty as such and inequality in the society. Even over the last, I would say, few weeks, both President Humala and President Correa admitted that they did a lot to fight poverty, unfortunately disregarding the concept of equality and social cohesion in the society. How do you see that?
I think we have increasingly proved in Europe, but also across the world, that inequality is bad for the economy. It's bad for society. It's bad for social cohesion. And at the end of the day, is a major problem beyond poverty. So what we need to do is make sure that you have systems in place so that there is more convergence, that is more equality being created, that will create more opportunities for more people to be involved in society and in employment. Poverty is a difficult measure in a way, because in Europe we look at poverty in a relative measure. So everybody that is under a certain level in a country would be called poor. Now the poor people in Luxembourg are very often more richer than the richer people in Romania. So there's the measurement of poverty is in Europe is a very relative measure, and in a way partially it measures inequality within a country, but not inequality within the European context. So in Latin America we measure, and worldwide you measure poverty in a very different way. In a way, you measure poverty more in an absolute term of having $2 a day or something like this. Before it was $1 a day, now it's $2 a day. So that's really extreme poverty, and you can take it that is surely not sufficient to live on and have an appropriate way of living. But poverty indicator says one thing, but it doesn't say anything on inequality and on what should be done. And so I'm very keen to have more indicators measuring the adequacy of your social protection system. And I think this is one of the major things where the areas where Latin America, Middle America, Latin America could really develop their they are in a situation where there's growth. So in a way, there is inequality, there is poverty, but there is growth that is at the level that Europe was 10 years ago, in a way. The lesson from Europe should be that when there is growth, use that to really build your systems so that you're ready for less growth or crisis situation. So make your systems decrease inequality, develop skills, invest in your young people, prevent more than correct afterwards, and that way your system and your society will be more inclusive, more equal to weather a crisis that one day will also come to Latin or Middle America.
So if I understand well, this is the moment for Latin America to start putting all the efforts in the reform of their social protection system.
Yeah, I think it's a fascinating time for Latin America to use the lessons, the positive and negative lessons from Europe, but also their own lessons, because I think Brazil, for example, has done, or Mexico, well, that's not Latin America, but still, there are a lot of lessons that we also learn from these countries. The activation possibility of services and cash transfers, conditional cash transfers, have been developed in Latin America in a way. Is an example there is the parents get cash to send the children to school instead of making them work or keeping them away from school. That has worked in Latin America. We are now examining if this is a useful avenue for some of the difficult situations in Europe, like with the Roma populations or the very discriminated populations in some of the countries, or the poorest populations. But so we can all learn from each other, but the moment for Latin America is now to really move into a strong social protection system.
Thank you so much.